right, so buckle up, everyone, because today we are going deep, deep behind the scenes of a podcast.
Behind the scenes, huh?
You got it. And this is not your typical behind the scenes.
Oh.
We're going to be listening to an actual production meeting from a podcast called Meta Loaf,
The whole thing.
a whole unedited raw audio.
Wow.
It's like we get to be flies on the wall, right?
Totally. That's a great way to put it. We get to eavesdrop on their creative process.
Hear all their crazy ideas, their struggles, and maybe even learn a thing or two about what not to do when you were making a podcast.
Uh-huh. Yeah, maybe learn from their mistakes.
Exactly. So let me introduce you to the stars of this audio drama. We've got Frisk Thornhill, the host,
Okay.
and this is important, he decided to take 5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms before this meeting.
5 grams.
You heard that right. 5 grams. Then we've got Woody Stevens, a regular contributor,
Okay.
and Robert Long, who seems to be a guest on the show.
So we've got a host on mushrooms, a regular contributor, and a guest. Sounds like a recipe for an interesting meeting.
Interesting is one way to put it. I mean, starting a production meeting on 5 grams of mushrooms.
That's certainly a choice.
Right. Talk about setting the tone for the rest of the deep dive.
It definitely makes you wonder what kind of podcast they'll be.
Oh, you're going to find out. Trust me. Well, let's just say it's something else. But things get even more interesting when they start talking about their reviews.
Our reviews. How are those?
Let's just say they haven't been winning over the critics.
Oof, I see. So what are people saying?
Well, they're particularly getting slammed by women and non-binary listeners under 35.
Oh, that's not good. So they are having trouble connecting with a younger demographic.
You could say that. I mean, they read one scathing review from a listener named Melinda, who straight up calls them offensive.
Offensive.
Yeah, and then there's Frank, who just thinks they're not funny at all.
Harsh but honest, I guess.
I guess so. But it's Woody's reaction to Melinda's criticism that really gets me.
What does he say?
He kind of just brushes her off.
How so?
Makes a joke about her name, which probably isn't the best way to win back listeners who already feel alienated.
Not a good look. Classic deflection, right? Instead of actually engaging with the criticism, they just dismiss it.
It's like they're not even trying to understand why people are reacting negatively to their content.
Right, like they're living in their own little bubble.
And it makes you wonder, if they're not willing to listen to their audience, how can they expect to grow and improve?
Exactly. You have to be willing to take criticism if you want to get better. But anyway, let's move on, shall we? What else is on the agenda for this unique production meeting?
Well, next up is the desperate hunt for sponsors. And let me tell you, this is where things take a truly absurd turn.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Their first prospect is this mental health app called Triggs AI.
A mental health app. Interesting.
It's ironic considering Frisk is, tripping on mushrooms during this entire meeting.
Yeah, a little ironic, maybe even a little concerning.
Totally. And get this, they discover that this AI chatbot, the one that's supposed to help with your mental health, literally has a disclaimer saying that it's not qualified to give actual mental health advice.
Oh, wow. So they are considering promoting an AI mental health app that admits to not actually being qualified to give mental health advice while high on mushrooms.
You got it. And Woody, never one to miss a comedic opportunity, chimes in with a mock ad for the app.
What does he say?
He says, Triggs AI, it made me feel even worse. So, yeah, the whole thing is played for laughs, but it does raise some serious ethical concerns,
Yeah, I mean, promoting a mental health app that might not actually be helpful, that's tricky territory.
It is. Especially when the person promoting it is in an altered state of mind.
I mean, it's a bit like recommending a hangover cure while you're still drunk.
The perfect analogy. And their decision-making gets even more contradictory when they move on to their next potential sponsor, Loose Slots.
Loose Slots.
Yep, a gambling app. And get this, Frisk admits to already having lost money on it.
Wait, so they're hesitant about a mental health app because of, ethical concerns.
Right.
But they are totally fine promoting a gambling app that's already costing them money.
That's Meta Loaf for you.
Yeah.
Logic is not their strong suit. I mean, it's almost like they're more drawn to sponsors that reflect their own questionable habits.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder, are they actually thinking about their audience and what's best for them, or are they just trying to make a quick buck?
It's a good question, and one that they don't seem to have an answer to. But wait, there's more. They then stumble upon Shopity.
Shopity, what's that?
It's a crafting website.
Oh, okay, crafting. Sounds harmless enough.
You'd think so, but Frisk's mind immediately goes to woolly lingerie.
Woolly lingerie.
Yeah, it's this awkward moment where he's trying to find a way to tie this wholesome crafting website to something a little less wholesome.
Wow, so their approach to sponsorships is basically random.
Totally random. There's no strategy, no brand alignment, no thought about their target audience.
It's like they're just throwing darts at a board and seeing what sticks.
Pretty much. And then, just when you think it can't get any weirder, they bring up Capital 2, a Bitcoin bank.
Bitcoin, huh? That's an interesting one. What's their take on it?
Well, they actually express concern that promoting a Bitcoin bank might alienate their existing audience.
Oh, why is that?
It hints at the fact that they might have a more conservative fan base than they realize.
So they are worried about alienating their current audience, which they think might be more conservative,
Yeah?
but they also want to attract younger, more progressive listeners.
It's like they are trying to walk this tightrope between two very different demographics.
That's a tough balancing act. A lot of creators struggle with that. Appealing to a wider audience without compromising your identity or alienating your existing fans.
And from what we've heard so far, Meta Loaf isn't exactly known for their subtlety or nuance.
So how do they try to solve this problem? How do they try to attract younger listeners?
Oh, that's a story for the next part of our deep dive. Let's just say their attempts to appeal to a younger demographic are just as chaotic and misguided as their approach to sponsorships.
Oh boy, I can't wait to hear this.
It's a wild ride, believe me.
Well, let's take a break and come back to the second part of this deep dive into the Meta Loaf podcast production meeting.
Sounds good to me. We'll be back soon.
All right, we're back and ready to dive back into this fascinating Meta Loaf production meeting.
Where we left off, they were kind of struggling, right? Trying to figure out how to get those younger listeners. They're fixated on this idea of needing a producer.
A producer.
Yeah, like someone to come in and wrangle all their crazy ideas.
So they want structure.
Well, sort of. I mean,
Yeah.
they do talk about needing direction,
Yeah.
someone to help them become more professional.
But didn't we hear them pushing back on outside input earlier? Dismissing those negative reviews?
Right. It's like they want the benefits of a producer, but without actually having to change anything about their approach.
That's a tough one. You can't really have it both ways, can you? Either you embrace change or you stay stuck in your ways. It's like wanting a personal trainer, but refusing to give up junk food.
Perfect analogy. And then, remember that whole thing about potentially attracting MAGA listeners?
That was interesting. It seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was a brief moment, but it did make me think it's like they have this awareness that their style of humor might resonate with a conservative audience.
But they don't seem to know what to do with that information.
Right. Do they lean into it? Do they shy away from it? It seems like they're kind of stuck in this in-between space.
They're trying to figure out who they are and who they want to be.
Exactly. Speaking of identity crises, let's talk about their movie review segment.
Oh yeah, the movie reviews. That was a trip.
It went off the rails pretty quickly.
Remember Night Swim? I mean, what even was that conversation?
It turned into this weird debate about whether people actually swim at night.
They completely missed the point. It's a movie review, not a philosophical discussion about the nocturnal habits of swimmers.
It's like their brains are wired for chaos. They can't stick to a topic to save their lives, which I guess is part of their charm, right?
Maybe. It's definitely entertaining, but it's not exactly high-quality content. And then there's the whole bragging about being in famous movies.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Robert claims to have been an extra in The Faculty.
Right, and then Frisk jumps in and insists that he was actually the body double for the main alien.
It's like they can't resist embellishing every story.
It makes you wonder if anything they say is actually true.
I mean, part of me wants to believe their Hollywood tales.
Me too.
Yeah,
But it's hard to take them seriously when they're constantly exaggerating.
maybe it's all just part of their shtick.
Yeah, maybe it's their way of poking fun at the whole celebrity-obsessed culture.
It's like they're saying, look at us, we're just as important as those Hollywood A-listers. Sort of.
I guess in a way, they are reflecting a bigger trend.
What do you mean?
This need to inflate your accomplishments, to make yourself seem more interesting or successful than you actually are.
Oh, you mean like everyone on social media?
Exactly. It's like everyone's trying to curate this perfect online persona.
And the lines between reality and fiction become blurred.
Right. And you start to wonder, are these people even real? Or are they just playing a character for the internet? Are we just playing characters?
Deep thoughts for a podcast about a chaotic production meeting.
I know, right? But that's the thing about Meta Loaf. They might be a mess, but they make you think. And as we head into the final part of this deep dive, I think the big question is, will they actually learn from their mistakes? Can they find a way to balance their chaotic energy with some much-needed structure?
Well, let's find out, shall we? On to the final act of the Meta Loaf saga.
Welcome back to part 3 of our deep dive. We're about to wrap up our look at the Meta Loaf production meeting.
It has been a wild ride, hasn't it? Mushrooms, woolly lingerie, and Bitcoin, oh my.
Haha. Yeah, it's definitely been a unique experience.
But I think amidst all the chaos and absurdity, there's something there's something kind of fascinating about Meta Loaf.
Oh, definitely. They might not have it all figured out, but there's a raw honesty to their approach.
It's refreshing, isn't it? In a world of carefully curated online personas, they're just out there being themselves, warts and all.
I think that's what makes them so intriguing. They're not afraid to be vulnerable, to show their flaws.
And in a weird way, that vulnerability makes them more relatable, more human.
Absolutely. It's like they're saying, hey, we're not perfect. We're making this up as we go along. And sometimes we screw up.
And that's okay.
Exactly. It's okay to not have all the answers, to be a work in progress.
I think that's a message that a lot of people, especially creators, can resonate with.
Absolutely. In a world that often feels obsessed with perfection and success, it's nice to see someone embracing the messiness of the creative process.
It's a reminder that it's okay to experiment, to take risks, to fail sometimes.
Because that's how you learn and grow.
And who knows? Maybe Meta Loaf will eventually find their footing. Maybe they'll attract those younger listeners they're so desperate to reach.
Or maybe they'll continue to be a glorious mess, a beacon of unfiltered chaos in a sea of polished perfection.
Either way, I think their story's a valuable one. It's a reminder that there's no one right way to create, no magic formula for success.
And that sometimes the most authentic and engaging content comes from those who are willing to break the rules, to challenge the status quo,
To be a little bit weird.
to be a little bit Meta Loaf.
Well said. So there you have it. Our deep dive into the Meta Loaf production meeting is complete.
It's been a journey, hasn't it?
It has, and I think we've learned a lot along the way about podcasting, about creativity, about the human condition.
And maybe even a little bit about ourselves.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of audio.